All right, so we're going to start with just the lesson of quadratic formula, and then we will do a completing the square from last week, and then I'll do any examples that y'all would like to see. The discussion question is just basically a completion grade. There's not a wrong answer, so you can either submit your response on the Google Classroom as a private comment, or you can do it as a class comment. It's completely up to you, but please use the sentence stem. The graph blank does not belong because I would like you to justify your answer. So there's not a wrong answer and there's not a right answer. They all can be excluded for one reason or another. So just pick which one you want to call out and use your vocabulary to tell me why you think it doesn't belong. All right. The other assignment is the quadratic formula matching. So I'm going to go through an example of that with you. So if I have 9x squared plus 6x equals 3, I am first going to move the 3 to the other side by inverse operations and subtract 3 from both sides. Because our first step is to get it to equal to 0 to start. So now I have 9x squared plus 6x minus 3 equals 0. Sorry, I never get better at writing with my finger on the screen. All right, so we're going to pick out our a, b, and c values because we need to know what they are in order to plug them into the formula. So a is the coefficient of x squared, which in this case is 9. B is the coefficient of x, in this case is positive 6. And c is our constant, which is negative 3. That's why it's important that everything be on the same side before you get started. So now, if I'm going to start with my formula, this is going to be your formula for everything. Okay, so in the matching, your first step is to plug it into the formula. So if we have negative 6, because it's the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 6 squared, minus 4 times our a value times our c value. Okay, all of this gets divided by 2 times our a value. All right. So now we have it all plugged into the formula. We're going to simplify as much as possible each step. So I'm going to start by saying 6 squared is 36. And then I have, ooh, that's ugly, 4 times 9, which is 36. And then 9 times negative 3. I'm going to cheat and use my little calculator here on my computer. Negative 4 times 9 times negative 3. Oh, that didn't make sense. They thought I was doing 4 times 9 times 3. 108. So this is actually going to change to plus 108 because I had the negative 4 here and the negative 3 here. That all is going to be divided by 18. Okay, we good so far? All right, so next we're going to add 36 and 108. And when I add those together, it gives me 144. So then it simplifies quite a bit after that. I have 6 plus or minus the square root of 144 divided by 18. All right, 144, the square root is 12, so I can simplify that into negative 6 plus or minus 12 divided by 18. Last step, I am going to break that into two equations. The first one is negative 6 plus 12 divided by 18, which negative 6 plus 12 is positive 6. 6 over 18 can be simplified to 2/3. Okay. The second one is going to simplify to negative 6 minus 12 divided by 18. That's going to be negative 18 over 18, so that will be negative 1. So your solutions are 2/3 and negative 1. All right, so our next example is x squared plus 6x equals negative 2, and that is from the quadratic matching Google Slides. I'm going to start by moving the negative 2 over to the other side by inverse operations. And when I do that, it becomes x squared plus 6x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, then I'm going to pick out my a, b, and c values because I need them to plug it into the formula. So a in this case is 1 because there's no coefficient of x squared. B is positive 6, and c, the constant, is positive 2. I'm going to plug those into this formula up here. Yes. This is located on your formula chart. So we're going to find our roots, aka x-intercepts, by plugging this into the formula. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times a times c. All divided by 2 times a. Parentheses look a little rough. All right, so I'm going to simplify that as much as possible. I'm going to do negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 8. And then I'm going to divide that by 2 because 2 times 1 is 2. So 36 minus 8 is 48. So then I'm going to have x squared equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 48 over 2. So I can't do the square root of 48 because it's not a perfect square. But if you recall back to the beginning of the school year when we were factoring and we made our factor trees, we can factor out a few. 12 and 4 make 48. 2 and 2 make 4. 2 and 6 make 12, and then 2 and 3 make. So I have 2 sets of 2 that can come out, and the 3 has to stay in. So that'll become negative 6 plus or minus 4 square roots of 3 divided by 2. Now when I divide by 2, well, actually we're going to go ahead and add and subtract first. So, oh, I'm lying, you can't add or subtract first. You can go ahead and divide by 2, and it only divides by the constant and the coefficient, not the radical. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Plus or minus 4 divided by 2 is 2. Oops. 4 divided by 2 is 2 times the square root of 3. And then that will be our final answer. We can't break it down any more than that because we don't, we can't add until we've solved this. So I think that was number 6 on the matching. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was number 6. The quadratic formula is new this week. But it's pretty simple to use as long as you plug everything into the right spot, and you take your time simplifying. Next, I'm going to do an example from the completing the square Google form. And I'm not sure what number this is on the Google form, but I'm going to remind y'all how to do it because some people struggled with it last week. I added this formula in the upper right hand corner that's not on a formula chart, but it's how you find the C value when you're completing the square. And most people that have struggled, when they get that formula, they suddenly understand how to do it. So that's super helpful. So here, I'm going to want to get the constant to go to the other side because it's not a perfect square. So then I'm going to have n squared plus 12n plus whatever I get when I complete the square equals negative 29 plus whatever I get when I complete the square again. I have to add it to both sides since it's an equation, and I have to keep it equal. So to find that C value that we're going to plug into both of those spaces, we're going to take our B value, which was 12. We're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to square it. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So I'm going to plug 36 in here and here. Then I'm going to factor the left-hand side since we made it a perfect square trinomial. It's a lot easier to factor. N times n gives me n squared, and 6 times 6 gives me 36. On the right-hand side, I'm going to just simplify. So negative 29 plus 36 is 7. Okay. So now to solve this, I have to take the square root of both sides. And then that will give me n plus 6 equals positive or negative square roots of 7. We can't simplify the square root of 7 because it's not a perfect square. So now when we solve, all we do is subtract 6 from both sides. And so one of them will be negative 6 plus the square root of 7. And the other will be negative 6 minus the square root of 7. Or they could write it like this, but they usually don't. All right, we've completed the lesson portion, and these are the 3 assignments that are due tomorrow by 4. You have the discussion question, where you just pick which does not belong and tell me why. You have the mixed practice that's on the Google Forms, the example I just did with the complete the square, and then you have the quadratic formula matching.